Father, I thank you for this time, and I thank you for this hour. Father, bless this moment. Let it bless somebody. Let me flow according to your spirit. And once again, I thank you for breath in my body, and I thank you for the return of my vitality and my vigor and the return of my thoughts. God, I thank you for redemption of my soul and the redemption of those who have also gone through many different ups and downs. Now, Father, let whatever I say today represent you in such a way that it'll change people's lives. I thank you once again for clarity of thought. And please help me be able to connect all the dots for this message right here and help someone in terms of what they're going through. Amen. All right, I'm back. I've been talking about the prodigal son, and we've established that the prodigal son, they give it that title. That's because whoever translated the Bibles decided that they wanted to talk about the son. The prodigal son, meaning the son that left and went off into the sunset to do his own thing. In him taking off to do his own thing, he had asked his father for his inheritance. And this is in Luke chapter 15. He had asked his father for his inheritance. And in him asking for his inheritance, it was inappropriate because his father was still alive. And in his father being still alive, it just was not good. So we were able to establish that it was inappropriate, and I'll just read here in Luke chapter 15, verse 13. It says, a few days later, this is after he asked his father, a few days later, the younger son gathered together everything that he had and traveled to a distant country. And there he wasted his fortune in reckless and in immoral living. And I wanted to just talk about, if you think about it, we have a lot of people children and teens who run away. And there's something that says, I can't do this anymore. I can't be in this house anymore. I can't go through what I'm going through anymore. And they run away. And you just collect what you think you have, and you just get out there. But oftentimes when people run away, they have no idea where they're going. They don't have a plan. And this is how sex traffickers are able to capture them. But for the sake of what I'm talking about tonight, there are some of us as adults that we run away, or we're in the middle of a journey that has caused us to run away. And I think I'd like to address some of the things that I think that has caused us to run away that we don't pay attention to. So with the prodigal son, which they call prodigal, but this could have been two sons. It should have been about two sons and the story of a loving father. Because it was the father who, when in verse 20, he says, the son had made a decision to come home. It says when he came to his senses, which means when he came to himself, meaning he found his authentic self. See, because when you run away, sometimes when you run away, when you leave your wife, leave your husband, leave your boyfriend, leave your friends, leave your family, whatever it is, you're trying to get away from some inner chaos, some inner confusion or something that's going on inside. And you just decide, I don't want to be in this company with these people anymore. But you're really not answering, what am I running from? And so in this scenario, he was running away. He wanted to do his own thing. And when we run away, in this scenario, he spent everything he had. Because it says here, but when it finally came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired men have more than enough food while I'm dying here? And while I'm dying here of hunger, I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him. And if you look at this from a perspective of someone who's run away, sometimes when you leave, I remember the first couple of times I left my wife, I only ended up at 7-Eleven or some store around the corner or something, because you don't have any way, you have no idea where you're going. You just know you want to get out from under that pressure. Well, in this case, when he comes back, his father, and I'll just paraphrase it, when he comes back, his father, he goes to say, hey, listen, I'm not worthy, Dad. I don't need to be loved. I mean, I just hire me out. Or just, let me be a hired hand. And if you understood the culture, what he was saying was he didn't get to live. That meant he wasn't going to live with his dad. He would live out in the hired hand community where the servants were. And he was saying, listen, I'll do whatever it takes, but I just need to be back home because I'm not feeling where I'm at. And so at this point, you would think that when he was on his way back, you would think that while he was on his way back, that, he's thinking, I know they're going to say I told you so, but when you're hungry and you're tired and you've come to the end of yourselves and you're out there. And what I want to talk about is out there too, because before I can get to the love of a father, when you get out there, that means you start hearing all kinds of thoughts. You start engaging in behaviors and things that you normally would not have been involved in. And so now remember, this whole story is a parable. It's a story about coming back home. And so I want to challenge some of you. You may have run away from your authentic relationship with God. You may have run away from that relationship and you've gotten caught up in some other wayward things where you spend yourself. Listen, I can't judge you. You know why I can't judge you? Because there are some times where I just don't want to be responsible no more. I don't want to be the upstanding one anymore. I don't want to be the understanding one. But I have to make sure that I stay home within myself and I stay focused within my authentic relationship. So back to the prodigal son. He goes out, he spends everything, and when he comes back, before he can even get it out his mouth, his father runs to him and says, quick, get my robe, get him a ring, and let's cook the fatted calf. And he wants to have a party. Why? Because he's recognized that his son was dead. And he tells, because by the time the brother comes, his older brother comes and he sees them having a throwdown and a party, he's saying, you ain't never did nothing like this for me. And I stayed here and I remained. As we go on, as we continue to talk about the prodigal son over the next, however long this season lasts, or the prodigal daughter, I want you to understand is that when he said that, he had an issue too. But his father understood, my son was dead. And when you're a father, and you're a parent, you often know your child better than they know themselves. And you know they ain't in their right mind. Even when they call home and say, hey, Ma, how you doing? Or, hey, Dad, how you doing? You know something ain't right. And sometimes they'll stay away. Why? Because they just don't want to go through the shame. But we find out in this parable that his father doesn't shame him. He accepts him. And so this speaks of a true father. This speaks of a father who will accept his son, or a parent who will accept their child. And so now, what do we have here? What is happening? When you run away from your dad, or you run away from your home, you've got some issues. And what I like to do is give an impartation and just flow on daddy issues and why it's time for you to come home to your Father in heaven, or understand what your natural father could have done, or what he was attempting to do, or what he did not do. This is not about blame. This is just to talk about daddy issues. And I hope that this goes down in history and being able to help you from a father's perspective, a spiritual father, a spiritual mentor, an actual father, a stepfather, someone who has trained other men to be fathers, someone who has fathered other men. I'm going to talk about a father and what you're supposed to get, or the things that a father goes through, or what happens with a father. Now listen, I'm going to say some things that are going to be challenging to you, because it's going to challenge what you think about fatherhood. But I'm going to tell you, let me first tell you why I am talking about the father, is because the moment you settle your relationship with your dad, the moment you settle your relationship, or settle that you won't have that kind of relationship that you thought you were going to have, the freer you will become. And hopefully there'll be some brothers and sisters, because I'm going to try to go between a daughter and a son. Hopefully once you hear some of the things I talk about and we discuss, you will understand the importance of a father. So I've always asked this question, true or false. Often you hear people say, I didn't need my dad. I didn't need him. I didn't have him, so therefore I didn't need him. Out of sight, out of mind. And is that true or false? You have to answer that. I believe that it's false. And by the time we get through this, you'll understand why you needed a dad, or why you still need a father. And so the purpose is the source of true fulfillment. Purpose is the source of true fulfillment. If you don't know your purpose, then you're not going to be able to have true fulfillment in life. And the purpose defines your existence. And without purpose, your life will cease to be meaningful. And you'll have a meaningless existence. This is why I spend so much time with my granddaughter, reinforcing how wonderful she is, reinforcing her confidence, not falsifying it, but reinforcing that. And I spend a lot of time with my own daughter, constantly telling her she could do it, and that she was strong, and that she was beautiful. And so if men don't know or understand how to fulfill their God-given purpose, then you're going to grow up with problems with your identity and your relationships. And so when you say, I don't need a father, this son needed a dad. And you don't realize that you may need some people think they just need a father when they're younger. You need a father in your 30s, your 40s, and if you're blessed, your 50s, 60s, 70s, and some people even 80s. You're going to always need that kind of connection. If you've never had that connection, don't say you didn't need it, because God, your God in heaven, your Father in the universe, he can fulfill that. But the word father means Abba, which means daddy. That's where we get the word daddy, Abba. And in the Greek, it means pater, or paternal. And so Abba, or your father, means he's the upholder. He is the source of everything. And so a father, that's why we always tell, for those of us who did have a father, when you're younger, you think your father is Superman. He can do anything. Why? Because he becomes the source of everything. And a father who upholds everything that comes from him. And so what a father, when the father hugs that son, and when the father shows love to the other son to say, everything you have is mine, what he's learning, what he's doing is saying, it's my job that everything I put in you to want to uphold it, to want to make sure you're able to uphold what's going on. This is why those of us with fathers have a heart to feel responsible for our children's future. If you're truly a dad, you just can't watch stuff happen and just allow it to happen. And it takes a lot to keep your mouth closed, especially when they get older. So now we want to talk about a father's role. See, because if you understand a father's role, you won't be bothered when it comes to being corrected. There's a scripture that says, he who hates correction is stupid. That's Proverbs. And often, if you don't like to be told what to do or to be corrected, the scripture says you're stupid. But now I'm also going to say you probably have not had a true father in your life, or you rebelled against the father for whatever reasons. And so now let's talk about a father's role. He's supposed to be your nurturer, your guardian, your standard of manhood, your instructor, your observer, your encourager, and your source. He's supposed to be all these things, and I'll go over each one of them in a second. See, because the day you understand this is your father, basically plays the role of God sometimes on this earth. Because that's why I think they get the term father knows best, because oftentimes a father will have had so much wisdom that when he speaks, he knows what he's talking about. I'm not saying that for every father. So now, truth, or as I like what they say now, facts. Almost every girl desires a close bond with the most significant man in her life. Almost every girl. And she will adore him if he loves and protects her, and if she finds safety and warmth in his arms. She tends to see all men through the lens of that relationship. And so based upon your relationship with your dad is how you're going to see every other relationship. And oftentimes, and I'll get to it, but oftentimes sisters can become high maintenance because you're expecting a boyfriend or a dad to do for you what your dad didn't do for you. And oftentimes you have to understand that he doesn't even know himself enough to be able to be that. But we'll keep going as I keep moving forward. And so if she sees herself through that lens, if he ignored her, if he was abusive, or if she was abandoned, then what that's going to end up, if you were abused, if you were ignored, if you were left to yourself, if the calls were not returned, you were not picked up, whatever the case may be, you're going to have an intense yearning within. In the boyfriend-girlfriend thing, I called it a hole in your soul. If your dad is not there, there'll be a hole left in your soul. And once that hole is in your soul, you're going to do everything you can to fill that soul, because what you're looking for is fulfillment. And we've already understood fulfillment is based upon your purpose. And so now, when you have this intense yearning, this yearning will also be colored with resentment. I say colored with resentment. This is why it's sort of hard at times to love a strong woman. A beautiful, loving, compassionate, but strong woman. Because sometimes if she's not aware of what she missed or what's missing, she's often going to demand that you meet something that you have no idea that she wants you to meet, because you haven't gotten to know her as of yet. When you have this resentment, I put a note here, she'll feel disappointment until either he dies or she dies. So let's talk about the nurturer. and I hope this is being a blessing to you. But let's talk about the nurturer. Because what we're dealing with, see, if you're going to deal with your daughter, if you're going to deal with your son, if they've missed a dad in their lives, if she's missed a dad in her life, and so let's get it out of just the prodigal son. Let's just talk about the daughter who's trying to find her way. You have to understand your father. Now, I'm going to give you these things, but I want you to understand this is what a father's role is, and then somehow maybe you will be able to not copy this, but learn from it and speak from the same vein. He was supposed to be your nurturer. He was supposed to teach you how to trust. Instead, he neglected you. You don't believe one. Now you trust no one. You don't believe men because you know they leave you numb. If you are not nurtured, then what's going to happen? You're going to have frozen feelings. You're going to be numb at times because you don't know what it means to be properly cared for. If he was supposed to be your guardian, which means you're Superman and you were left unprotected, then that means you're going to have a situation that when you get into another relationship with someone else, you're going to constantly feel insecure. You're going to feel threatened. And what you're going to need, if you look at Maslow's pyramid of needs, you're going to constantly have to have a need to feel safe. And if you're not feeling safe, then there can be no peace in the relationship or in the house. The next one, he was supposed to be your standard of manhood. I said that earlier, but I want to talk with you. The standard of manhood, a father teaches his child how to take initiative. They don't do it for the child. If you're raising a son and you're raising a boy, you have to teach him how to take initiative, and you can't finish his sentences. You can't tell him, let me do it, get out the way. A father, I remember teaching my daughter when I was her standard of manhood how to take initiative. That is, go ask the question. Don't make any assumptions. Do you know that to be true? Open your mouth. He puts his pants on the same way that you do. I would take her to the store and let her go. I say, I'm going to sit in the car, but I can see you. Go get what you need to get. And she come back, she say, well, she said this. All right, then go back and tell, what do you think? And she say, now go back. But she knew dad was there. I'm teaching her initiative so that she's not scared. If she doesn't get taught an initiative and she is not taught what a man is about, then she's going to be starved for the attention of a man. Am I making sense, guys? I hope I am. She's going to be starved for the attention of a man. And when she becomes starved for the attention of a man, that's when she's going to end up in all kinds of messed up situations. Here's the last one I'll share. By the time she becomes mid-teens, late teens, pre-adulthood, the father was supposed to be the instructor, and that he was supposed to teach you how to float so you would avoid the ways of destruction. And so a father gives instruction. And I often have run into problems or challenges with people because I often talk like a father and and I'm giving instructions. But that's what it is, just in a father's blood. It's in a parent's blood to give instructions. And that's what a father will do, because giving instructions keeps you from destruction. So now, when it says train your child in the way that she should go or he should go, what it's saying is everything has to be a teaching moment. Everything, especially in this day and age. If you're going to keep your child from running away from home. Now, a teaching moment don't mean nagging. You just have to pick the right moments to be a teacher. Now, I shared all those different things because now we can see that you definitely needed a father if you didn't have one. Now, what this leads to in relationships later on is a power struggle. Because many of us, my wife told me several different times, she just knew that all men cheated. And she just knew all men cheated, and that is the norm for what men do. And it was hard for me to believe that. And then I was in I sound like the people, in an Uber, and another lady told me the same thing. She said, I think all men cheat. And so, if you come in with that expectation, then there's going to be a lack of trust. Now, I said that to say, because sometimes when you don't have a father and you've run away from yourself and you have not come to yourself, you will often, give me 1 second, you will often, I want to make sure, okay. You will often find yourself making assumptions and trying to get people to line up with your expectations. And you end up emotionally disconnected because you're now going to make this person meet your conscious or unconscious expectations that you don't even know. And most of our expectations are not based upon reality, but based upon something we've seen, but not something we've lived. And so my challenge to you is to understand, who is the Father to me? Who is my Father? How am I supposed to deal with my Father? Because if you're not careful, you'll project what didn't take place in your life on the very person you love because you want them to meet your expectations. And the primary expectation is that you're going to love me the way my parents didn't. You're going to love me the way my parents didn't, or the way my parents never did. You are here to satisfy my unmet childhood needs. And so what you will find out is that if you didn't have a father in your life, you didn't have the nurture, you ran away from yourself, you ran away from home, you lost who you are, you now are an amalgamation of all the different experiences and hurts that you had. And then you get into a relationship and you're now expecting that person to heal you. You are partially correct. Often we hook up with the people that when we marry, or the people we fall in love with, are the people that help us finish our unfinished business. And many of us have unfinished business when it comes to fatherhood, and unfinished business when it comes to dealing with the dysfunctions that we've gained from our own hurt, our own running away from our spiritual realities. And so, if I go just a little further here, his wounds were criticism, and your wounds were criticism. If I like to say this, criticism doesn't work. It doesn't work. It never has, and it never will. It doesn't work. The question you have to ask is, how do I get them to want to do this without labeling them or hitting them? I'm trying to help you deal with the power struggle that comes when you don't have your father. Defensiveness. If you become defensive as opposed to saying, let me hear what it is they're trying to say. Something just happened yesterday, I think, with my wife. And she was upset about something. And it was not for me to defend myself. It was for me to explain to her I understood exactly what she was saying, and to repeat to her, not mimic her, but repeat her and tell her that I understood what she felt. And I understood how I could correct that, or what we could do, or here is what has happened. But I didn't defend myself. Why are you upset? Why are you going through that? Why? Because I want harmony. And because I've settled my issues with my own father and I've forgiven myself, I know I want harmony. And because I want harmony, I don't want to bring defensiveness into this. When you're defensive, that often means that you haven't dealt with your own insecurities and you have a need to be right. Let me keep going. I'm almost there, my friends. When you stonewall, you decide that you're not changing, and you get caught up in trying to prove yourself. So let's talk about change. How will you change? How will we change? How did I change? Let's just talk about that. It don't have to take you as long as it took me and Jill to make a change. It doesn't have to take long at all. How did the prodigal son, that they named the prodigal son, but the son that was out there, make a change? How do you make a change in your life? First, you must understand when it's time to make a change, what you're being asked by the universe, what you're being asked by God, is to break an old belief structure. And when the prodigal son, when he was out there, the son who had spent everything, when he realized he needed to make a change, he had to break his old belief structure. And you must understand, when you're making a change, it has to be gradual. As I went through this new norm, I told somebody earlier today or yesterday, you have to go through a loss of who you used to be, and you have to go through a transition into becoming who God is calling you to be, which is change. And so if you want change to take place, then you have to know that it's going to be gradual and not fast. So what I've learned to do when I'm changing, even if other people can't see what the changes are, I remind myself, look at the incremental things that are happening that are good. Look at the progress that you are making. And even if it seems like you took 4 steps forward and 3 steps back, then you took 1 step forward, you're still ahead of the game. And so change is incremental. And so to change, you have to take off the mask. If you're going to change, I had to take off the mask of being, in order to deal with my insecurities and my daddy issues, I had to take off the mask of bravado. I had to take off the mask of I'm the man of the house. I had to take all those masks off. You have to take off the mask that I'm strong. One of the things that kill our sisters, especially the sisters who are single parents and the women who are single parenting and doing all this, is, or even a mother, is trying to be strong all the time. It ain't about being strong all the time. And so you take off the mask, but you must understand, when you become real with people and you take off the mask, it's going to be a strong emotional reaction to you, because people are going to think you're brand new. And you can't worry about what people thinking when you're going through a change of life, because God is bringing you into a new place or a new understanding. And you must understand that the truth in the end is going to set you free, but the truth is painful to discover. So change, when the prodigal son was out there, when the daughter is out there, when you are out there, when change is going to take place, it's going to be gradual. And not only will it be gradual, it's going to set you free, but it's going to be painful. Change is painful. I'm a new person. In me being a new person, when that song, I Know I've Been Changed, the angels in heaven done signed my name, I know I've been changed because I went through all the painful tunnels there had to be. And when you're changing, a lot of people don't want to wait for you to change because they want you just to be different. But when you're changing, you can't be concerned about anybody. You must be concerned about what God is showing you to do. When you change, you're going to discover that you have attachments. When he was out there, he had to realize, I can no longer be attached to my pride. I can no longer be attached to this old thought. You have to get rid of your attachments. And the reason we have these attachments, I told my mother today, I said, in order to have a father, I made a father out of 5 or 6 different men. I got this from this one, this from that one, this from this one, this from that one, because I wasn't trying to change and to become whole. But the day you come to yourself, the day you accept the truth, the day you take off the mask and you become vulnerable, that's why when you see that I'm transparent, I'm not transparent just because it's a tactic. I'm not being open because it's just something to do. I'm being transparent. Why? Because the truth sets you free. And if you hold to the truth, you are indeed his disciples. Then you will know it and you will be set free. And so holding to the truth is painful, because sometimes change is about showing you the ugliness of who you are. And the prodigal son had to come to a conclusion. I've been ugly. That's why he said, I ain't even worthy to be loved. I ain't even worthy, but take me back anyway. And so if we keep going, and when you change, you must understand you're going to go through a season where you're going to be resistant to certain actions, because you realize that you've lived a lie for so long that by the time you recognize truth, it's overwhelming and shocking to your system. I know you hear me talk about my struggle and what I've been through. That's my story. And sometimes God has to take you down a road that's unknown, unplotted or traveled territory for your soul. But you have to make the decision to go to the place of the unknown. Especially when crisis, suffering, or something has come into your life. Because it's not about changing relationships or changing people. It's about allowing God once and for all to bring the change within your life. When that son was out there with those pigs, he realized, what have I been reduced to? I understand when somebody says, never again. Never again. You know why I understand it? Because there's something in me that says, never again will I allow myself to go through certain issues. And never again will I run away from my own personal deliverances. Why? Because the freedom that comes with returning home is restoration and redemption. I can see myself smiling, and I can see that the joy is returning to me. And no matter what happens, once you find your joy and you find your peace and you find your place, you ain't gonna let nothing, never again, you're gonna never let it take it from you again. That's because I allowed change. And my change was I chose love. And I decided no matter what, I ain't doing no events, I ain't doing nothing, God, until you teach me how to love you and love myself. So, Here's what we will do. I will pray for you. And hopefully God will bless you. And for those of you, this is for the brothers and sisters. You know, this is our Bible study night normally. But due to the inclement weather, I'm doing this. But I like to pray that you would come to your senses. And if you've already come to your senses, that you would allow yourself to go through the period of change so that you can return back to a place. Hey, y'all, let me tell you something. I just keep saying this, I'll show you better than I can tell you. But no one knows what it means to be restored. And if you do, you know what change is. So I'm going to pray for you. Father, bless those who are listening, those who are watching, those who are listening to the rebroadcast. Bless them, Father, that they'll know change and they'll find it. They'll find it. And they'll find the truth in you. Give them the ability to withstand the hurt and the disappointment and the pain that comes with change. But Father, let them make it to the other side. In your precious Son, Yeshua, Jesus' name, bring you deliverance. Amen.